Welcome back to the new normal. It's me, Tony Sindelar, your friend, instructional designer, here to share some thoughts about how we are dealing with this new normal of teaching in a virtual world, teaching in physical isolation, navigating new technologies and new teaching strategies. I am joined by another guest today. Joining me today is Steve Siselewski, the lead academic support counselor at the MGH IHP, specializing in supporting students in the School of Nursing. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Tony, how's it going?
It is, it's okay. It's all relative. That's a more not as innocent a question as it was a month ago.
Right, very true.
Um,
Very true.
so, the first thing I like to do, not that I've been doing this for very long, but it seems like a good thing to do is kind of check in with people. How are people doing? How are people adjusting to the working from home, the working in isolation, the whole deal? So, how are you doing?
Tony, thanks for asking. I don't know. Day to day, let's be honest.
Hmm.
No, honestly, I'm doing okay.
Hmm.
Um, I it's just one of those things. You
Hmm.
just kind of experience it moment to moment. Um,
Hmm.
during the week of spring break, it was so difficult to really put your head around what we were going to experience, how this is all going to take shape. And I think um, I've been in this reactive mode for about 2.5 weeks now, going on
Hmm.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've attempted to check in with myself a few times, and as far as I can tell, I'm doing okay.
Hmm.
I had an experience a few years ago of being unemployed. So when I was unemployed, I was at home a lot. I had unstructured time, and without structured socialization, structured events. So I really have been leaning on some of the skills that I
Hmm.
learned while I was unemployed to create some routine, create a schedule, and really engage with students and faculty and staff.
Hmm. It's really interesting that you compare it to the unemployment experience. I think in part it's the weirdness of this all, right? I mean, I saw a really great tweet yesterday, which was basically like it's not entirely fair to say that we're working from home. We are working in a crisis and happen to be trapped at home,
Right,
right?
right.
Because we weren't able to prepare for this. It wasn't like you had a month or a week to set up a home office or, make sure you had all the materials. It was like it's like you've been suddenly imprisoned or something, right?
Right. You were
Um,
just kind of dropped out of the sky and here you are.
yeah,
And,
and so.
and really being forced to come up with your own structures. I mean,
Mhm.
when we're at work, when students are at school, we're surrounded by social cues. And
Yeah.
those social cues really guide us through the day. And like, okay, here's what I do next, and here's how I interact with this person. And so much of your day is just based on your schedule and based on
Hmm.
where you need to be. And right now, I'm in one room of my house for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it really takes some creativity. It takes some um, discipline too, quite honestly.
Hmm.
What I'm finding it a lot easier for me, and this is not true of all my colleagues, but for me to dress up.
Hmm.
The first day I wore a t-shirt and jeans, and I was in a meeting, and it was like, this feels really casual to me. And
Hmm.
so the next day I wore dress pants and a dress shirt, and
Hmm.
that's me going to work.
Hmm.
And when I'm done with work, I change out of that into more casual clothes. And it might be a little weird, but for me, it kind of signals like the start and the end of a work day.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's routines, right? That's what I feel like I'm kind of reeling is that I do not have routines. I need to create new routines. Even, guess what? I don't miss having to commute. Commuting was kind of a stressful, unpleasant part of my day, but it was also like a part of my day that was like a routine, and it got me
Right,
outside, and I was getting steps in, and like not having that to like bookend my workday is weird.
right,
So,
right. And
um,
that's a great way to ramp up and then like decompress after a day is just
yeah,
having that walk.
yeah.
That's one of the elements of my day that my wife and I are doing now.
Mhm.
We shut our computers off at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we make sure we go out and we walk. We get that fresh
Mhm.
air that
Yeah.
otherwise we wouldn't be getting trapped in a house.
Yeah, I used to find I had kind of a routine of I would look at my email in the morning before I left for work and kind of skim stuff and probably not actually reply to everything. And then on my commute, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm walking, I am thinking about the things I have to do that day and the replies to that. And then I get to my computer and then I can kind of run through them. But it is like and right now there's no kind of ramp up to work. It's just like I walk from my bedroom to my living room and now,
Boom.
it's like, which let me tell you, in my apartment, it's not a very long walk. So,
Yeah, for
yeah,
me, it's, before I was really kind of structured with how I did work. I would look much like yourself at email early on, and then I would commute in. Now I'm up at 6:30. I'm looking at email.
yeah,
So at any point during there's about a 15-hour span of the day where I'm engaged in work in some way or another,
which may not be sustainable
which
for you.
isn't great for
Yeah,
wellness.
yeah. So, Steve, the reason I wanted to have you on today and to kind of hear from you is, I'm trying to give faculty as much advice as I can about how they can deal with this. But, I'm an instructional designer. There's certain things that I know a lot about, and there are lots of things I don't know a lot about. And this I work a lot every day with faculty. Students are not an audience that I have a lot of access to. I do teach a class as an adjunct, so I know my students, but I don't know the students of the IHP at large in a direct way. And when we were preparing for this transition, I made like a little like an ideal board for myself with little post-it notes of like, these are all the problems we're going to have to deal with. And I actually like color coded them. And there was like basically one column of like, these are going to be the teaching problems of moving to online. These are going to be the technology challenges and things that people are going to have to get up to speed with. And those are kind of two columns that I spend a lot of my day-to-day life in, is those thinking about technology, thinking about teaching, thinking about the intersection of those. I'm pretty comfortable about those columns. And then I had a third column that was like new to me. And like the first item in that column, like in big and all caps, was like student mental health. Because there's a lot of people who are spending a lot of work on like, here's what it looks like to pivot your courses, and here's what the move to online looks like. And it kind of ignores the fact that our students are learning in a crisis, and our students are having a rough go of it, and our students are social isolating. And I mean, I don't know how much it's happening already, but there's going to be it seems inevitable, a future where our students are sick. And so I wanted to have you on to kind of, perhaps if you could share with faculty, what are you seeing and hearing from students, and what would you like them to know about that's happening in students' lives?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I think some people may be hearing from their individual students, but probably they could benefit from you hear from a lot of different students.
Yeah, the first, we're to what, week 3 now?
Yeah, I think so.
So the first week was the week after spring break. A lot of the students were just getting back and just kind of absorbing the shock of, holy cow, I'm not coming back to campus. The second week was the realization of like, oh my God, how am I going to get all this work done?
Yeah.
And week 3, we seem to be finding a little bit of a normal, like, okay, this is what it's going to look like for the rest of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
So each week has had like different themes or different stresses.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that students are really struggling, I think, first and foremost with communication.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for a centralized source of communication. They're looking to have clear expectations understood, and with that, deadlines too. There's something is lacking. Something is missing when you're not face to face with a faculty member. Even that 30-second interchange when you're leaving the room, you say, "Hey, this exam is in 2 weeks, right?" Or this assignment is due 8 o'clock, not at 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. So it's those little things that they're missing that I feel like is making their life in this transition a little bit more difficult.
Something I sometimes talk to faculty about when they're designing online courses, and this is people designing online courses under ideal conditions, right? They're spending 6 to 10 to 15 weeks designing an online course, and it may be a course that already existed as a face-to-face course. And one of the things I try and spend a lot of time reminding faculty about is I sometimes call it that, like, the connective tissue, right? Like your course is not just your content. It's not just your slides uploaded into a learning management system. And sometimes, that's the stuff where faculty spend a lot of their work and it's their identity as a professional. But
Right.
even faculty who are, who they think of themselves as, you don't just walk into the classroom and flip on your slides and start reading slide one. There's
Right.
things you do to establish context that may not be on the slide. And I think the challenge is when you move into an online environment, and again, people do this when they are designing a whole online course with lots of lead time, they lose that connective tissue. They lose the, here's how what we're doing now fits into the next thing. Reminder, the exam is in 2 weeks. Hey, this slide talks about a thing that's going to be a big deal on that exam, or is a thing that people get tripped up on. Those threads get lost when we move to the online experience, even for people designing in the best case scenarios, and no one is operating in the best case scenarios. So,
Right.
I mean, I think that is a reminder to think about, when you start your Zoom sessions or your asynchronous recordings, or even just when you're posting materials in D2L, what are those things that you want to, how are you checking in on students? How are you reminding them about those things? Because it's hard. There's a lot of information right now, and students can't be relied on to sift through everything, especially when they're in the places where they are now. You
Right.
got to try and make things as simple for them as possible, and reminding them of those things. And for me, I'm bad at remembering those. When I do a session, I give myself a little checklist on a index card or a post-it note of like, remember to tell them about these things at the start of class or the end of class, to remind them, to remind myself, to remind them. Because if we're not doing that, if we're just delivering content, the experience is going to suffer.
And the thing is, these students have basically their major contact point with the IHP is their faculty. When they think IHP, I mean, they're not really thinking about you or me.
Nope.
They're thinking about, hey, here's my faculty member who I'm seeing once a week for 3 hours at a time, or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the relationship. And you're right. It's within those intangibles, the casual interactions, that's where the relationship for the student and being a member of that community really comes to life.
I even think about, Zoom is a powerful, very convenient tool, but the nature of a Zoom room is, it is a classroom. It's like going to a classroom where the class only starts when the instructor shows up and unlocks the room, right? Yeah. You can't kind of mingle with other students and chat with them before the class begins, unless the instructor takes steps to allow that, or after the class begins. It's, and there are places like this where it's like, you wait for the instructor to unlock the door and you go in and class immediately starts, and then class ends and you all have to file out. And, but there's not even, there's no hallway where you can chat with other students, right? The downside of these kind of online spaces is that they're very instructor oriented, and the instructor kind of has complete control of everything. So if you don't,
there's no student lounge and there's no 7-Eleven, and
if maybe that is hard for you to think about this semester, faculty, but that is a thing to think about going forward. You want to create, where are those student lounges? Where is the 7-Eleven across the street? Where is the study space, the nook in the hallway? Because if we got to create those in online spaces, if they don't exist, students suffer.
And that's the thing about the IHP over so many places. It's about the community. It's about that small school sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And you don't get that at online schools.
No.
And I think that's something we really need to work hard at.
And not just us. A lot of places are going to work at that, but I think it's a reminder, those are valuable. If the relationship, the model for thinking about teaching and learning is that the three things: the interaction between student and content, student instructor, and student to student. And bad/weak online courses focus on that student to content. And I think at the IHP we're good about student instructor, but we could always, and as we move to online spaces, we could make sure that we're being good about that.
Right.
But a place that we're probably not where we want to be, or not where we should be, is student to student in online spaces. And how can we make sure that those happen?
And that's one of the things I'm asking students when I meet with them. Mm-hmm. I'm asking them, how are you connected with your classmates? Are you talking to people? And by and large, they're texting. Well, I'm on a bunch of different text threads, and we're on Facebook, and a lot of the exchanges is just digital. It's text message. There isn't a whole lot of people using video or Zoom. So they're losing a whole lot of the emotion and the interaction, if you will. And I've been encouraging them, and I think that there's an element of risk reaching beyond text messaging that the students are just not quite ready to take.
Hmm. And that may be the challenge, that as that was may have been a nice support mechanism for the face-to-face interaction to continue that outside of class, but as we move into an online space, I don't know. It's always, I try to celebrate where are students finding each other and communicating with each other, and go to whatever tools they adopt is great. But there may be things that making sure they are aware of what is available to them, because there are certain types of collaboration that like probably they should be doing in a Zoom or a Zoom equivalent,
Right.
even if they choose their, if they want to use whatever the Zoom equivalent is that the kids are using. Um, I say that as a person who's out of touch with the technology of younger people, not that our students
Holy
are kids.
cow.
Our students are adults. So Steve, the one kind of just, I mean, is there advice that you would love to pass along to faculty? What should all faculty be thinking about if they are not already thinking about in terms of how they can help students get through all this?
I think the big thing is what we were touching on earlier,
Mm-hmm.
is cultivating the relationship with students,
Mm-hmm.
letting them know that they're there. Um, Share some of the experience, what it is like to be faculty and going through this.
Yeah.
If you've got some opportunity to go a little easier with some deadlines, I ask that you help out a student to do that. They're struggling. People are struggling to adjust, and I think students are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Um, Keep your expectations clear, and be available. Quite honestly, so much is accomplished just by seeing someone and hearing their voice and the emotion in their voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think having extra office hours and establish office hours for each course, or we've got this topic we just talked about. I'm going to have an extra office hour just to talk about the endocrine system or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But just invite that, and the
Yeah,
students
yeah.
will show up.
And I think that,
If they don't, they're still going to be like, oh, you know what, my faculty gave this.
yeah.
So they're reaching out, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe nobody actually attends, but it's seen and it's
Yeah.
appreciated.
That invitation goes a long way. And I think, some faculty are used to doing office hours by appointment, and I understand the realities of why you might do that. But now might be a time to think about occasionally not doing them by appointment, but by like, I am inviting you.
Yeah.
It's the difference between you need to contact me and have a reason and set up a time with me versus just like, my virtual door is open.
Right.
And that's something I've been offering for faculty in my role as an instructional designer is, this is a time when you can just drop by and ask me a question. And whether that's right after your class session or another time, and again, students may not, this is one of those things where even if students do not take you up on it, knowing that it is available may make them feel like more at ease and more ready to deal with the challenges that they are facing. So
Right.
I think that's a really good piece of advice for faculty. And, and of course the big ones, flexibility and be a human. That's one of the challenges as we adopt more and more technology. It doesn't have to stop you from being a human. And in fact, it may be more important to remind them that, you're a human, you're a health professional dealing with all this too. And that like, there's some valuable life lessons in there to share with them that I think they appreciate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Steve, anything else that we should touch on in terms of how students are doing that what faculty could learn from that? It's all a lot. And I always feel like I need to add a big asterisk at the end of any of these videos. Like, I have a lot of advice. I have a lot of ideas. Faculty, it's on you to decide what is realistic for you to do. And some of this is not stuff that you can do today or tomorrow or this week, but maybe is down the road. And, just as students have to pace themselves, you got to pace yourself too, because it seems like we're in this for a while, and you can't reinvent the world in a day. And even if you could, your students may not be ready for it. So, take care of yourselves, pace yourselves.
Right. The only other thing I could think of is to ask students.
Yeah.
The students are the ones who have the needs. The students are the ones going through it. So they may very well know the problem and know a solution.
Yeah.
So they may just be able to offer that up. So,
yeah. Check in with students. See if there's students who you can leverage to help out with managing groups, with ideas about the technology, about anything. Like, again, this is a place where we have to be in it together. As we are moving into these new spaces, none of us is an expert at rapidly pivoting our course to online. Let's not pretend that we are, and let's be open to feedback and help from everyone around the be they whatever their role or title, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
cool.
So,
Well,
and also to let faculty know I'm here.
yeah,
Mike Booten in the School of Health Rehab Services, and I'm here for School of Nursing, and if faculty need any help or um,
yeah. So absolutely,
best.
faculty, this is a good time. See if I'm worried about your schedule, but this is a good time to remind your students that Steve and Mike and others are available to help them out, and they don't have to be in this alone. And there are other resources available through partners. Let's not pretend that this is easy,
Yep.
and let's not pretend that they need to do it alone, because there is places they can get help.
Yep.
And I was talking to a friend who lives in Canada who is a psychotherapist, and she's like, yeah, things are a little busy, but like, people need help. I'm here to do help.
Right.
This is the job. Right?
Yeah, and we do
So
the best we can with what we
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I think that's the other thing.
So
We're all doing our
Steve,
best here.
I think this was great. I hope faculty take some of your words to heart. Again, flexibilities, think about how you're doing those office hours. Be a human. Be a human is a good rule one. Be a human.
There's the mantra.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us here on
Thank
the
you,
new
Tony.
normal, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
You too.
Bye.